Hello, and welcome to the first podcast about the greatest football team in the entire world, Millwall Town. I'm Vinnie Jones, I'll be your host, and we'll be taking questions for Millwall Town after the break. So, see you later. Sorry about that, he went into the wrong room. Now, what this podcast is actually about, it's not about Millwall Town, it is about movies, because we all love movies, and I'm Harvey, I'm 14 years old, and I've got a co-host with me, Ryan McClellan. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It is going good. Now, tell us a bit about yourself, Ryan, because that's what people want. They like to know who they're listening to.
Yeah, sure. So, like Harvey said, my name's Ryan. I'm originally from New Hampshire, but I'm serving in the U.S. Army right now, and so I'm stationed in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Honestly, I love movies. I pretty much always have since The Lion King and Star Wars and all the way up until now. There are fewer things better in art than movies. They combine great writing, great visuals, and great music, and I think that movies are the ultimate form of art. So I just love talking about them. So I'm very excited to be here today.
I agree, and I'm excited to be here too. Now, you may be asking, what is this show? Well, it's me and my co-host Ryan just talking about movies, really, and it's not just movies, it's everything associated about movies. And the one thing we will be talking about is Schmoes Know and Collider and Jeremy Jahns and Chris Stutman. If you've never heard of those names, you should, by the way, if you're listening to this podcast. They do movie-related content on YouTube, and we love them, don't we, Ryan?
Absolutely. Schmoes Know. All of their content that they have is incredible.
I agree. And just before we get into what we're going to talk about, did you watch the Schmoes Know last night?
I did. I actually I watched the first hour last night live, and then I got called away, but I was able to finish it this morning, and it was a great show. Absolutely, it was hilarious.
What do you think of the collaborations in YouTube? Because you've got Jeremy Jahns coming in and being on Schmoes Know. Do you think with Jeremy Jahns, 1.1 million subscribers coming to Schmoes, can he increase their fan base, do you think?
Honestly, I do think so, and I honestly almost wonder if he's almost looking to increase his fan base as well, because Schmoes, I mean, you know it, I know it, we all know it. Schmoes has a very dedicated fan base, and those collaborations, I think they're helpful for both Mark Ellis and Christian Harloff and the Schmoes crew, as well as Jeremy Jahns himself. I think, them working together, they go well together, and I think that they both have something to gain.
That's very well put. We're not just going to be talking about YouTube because people have Schmoville, hosted by Ryan Snelling, plug there. First off, we will be talking about the controversial Suicide Squad. People have a varying opinions on Suicide Squad.
And it's crazy.
I think we have the same kind of opinion.
Very similar, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, because we've been talking about that. Now, there's some key points I want to get to in this thing about Suicide Squad. Was the soundtrack and the use of music.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think the use of music bonded with the story and the directing? How did it fit in?
Sure. First of all, they had great song choices. And I think that was what I had heard some other reviewers say is like, okay, great songs, but the only issue is after a while, it's just like, okay, you're throwing all these classics at us, and it became distracting. Honestly, I think there was probably three or four towards the end that were very unnecessary, and I think that the score, the cinematic score, could have served those moments better. Mind if I give a quick example?
You may.
All right, so there was this one scene. I believe it was the first time Amanda Waller was walking up to the Belle Reve prison, and they had just finished another song. I don't remember which one. And then as she's walking in, they roll right into another one, and it didn't fit Amanda Waller's character, in my opinion, at all, and it was very jarring. And so that was the most notable example of where it went wrong. So I feel like there were three or four that they cut out, but when they hit it right. When they used House of the Rising Sun, I mean, I love that song, and it actually fit the moment. So I think that they probably just could have toned it down a little bit, but I enjoyed the few songs that were at the beginning there.
Do you think the use of music was as useful to the story as the music in Guardians of the Galaxy? Because the use of Guardians of the Galaxy, it fit the story perfectly. Do you think the music was actually needed in this movie?
Um, Necessary? No, I wouldn't say that was necessary. You bring up a good example as far as Guardians of the Galaxy because he has the mixtape and he's listening. It's something tangible in the story itself, whereas here it kind of, I think it was good when they used it to set I'll say this, the music itself was a character because it allowed you to quickly get inside the tone and the mindset of each of these members of the Suicide Squad. So it was useful in that sense. But no, I wouldn't say it was necessary because you could do the same thing with a score. I mean, that is the purpose of a score is you have themes for each character, and that's what allows you to get inside the mindset of that character. But the reason I believe that they use these songs is because again, they're hits. Everybody knows them, so they're a little more easily accessible.
Do you think the studio added that music in, or do you think that was part of David Ayer's plan? Because you see quite a few David Ayer films. I recently watched Fury, and
Mm.
they're very different. I think if you look back to Training Day, there's some hip music, street music in there, you could say. But you think was this David Ayer's project, or was it really muddled with the studio and were there too many cooks in the kitchen?
Um, I think it began as David Ayer's project before Batman v Superman was released in theaters. Um, I think that's pretty obvious when you see the very dark tone that is almost underlying in the movie. And because, well, I will say this too. I mean, he did write Training Day, but Anton Fuqua directed it, and he definitely likes to use a lot of hip music. But then you watch End of Watch, and I believe that there are some popular songs thrown in there as well. So I would say that David Ayer, he has a good sense of fun as much as he has a sense of a dark tone. But I think that Warner Brothers forced him to run with the lighthearted tone a little more than maybe he had originally planned. And I think it shines through when some of the jokes feel forced and some of these songs feel forced. And it feels like they were last minute decisions in an attempt to kind of regain some control over their DC cinematic extended universe, whatever they call it nowadays. And I feel like ultimately there were too many cooks in the kitchen. Yes.
You bring up BVS, and people obviously think, oh, don't compare them, but we're human, we have to compare them. Which, in your eyes, was better? Okay, I'll rephrase that. Which do you prefer?
um that is actually a good question, and I would have to really cement it, I would have to see Suicide Squad again. I've only seen it once, and then I saw BVS once in the theater, and then I recently watched the Ultimate Edition. And the Ultimate Edition certainly improved Batman v Superman, and I loved Ben Affleck as Batman. That's by far my favorite part of the movie is all the scenes that he's in. However, I found myself having more fun with Suicide Squad, and I don't always judge a movie off of how much I have fun with it, but that's what I wanted out of Suicide Squad. So I would say that I got more of what I expected and what I wanted out of Suicide Squad than I did with Batman v Superman. And so that leads me to say that I like Suicide Squad more, but it's kind of six of one, half dozen of the other because neither of them are great films by any means.
You bring up the Ultimate Edition, and people may think we're going on a bit of a tangent. We will get back to the review soon, but I just want to talk about the Ultimate Edition.
Sure.
They have said that David Ayer might be releasing his cut on the DVD, and if they do that with every single DC movie, I will probably not go see a DC movie in cinema for the next 20
Absolutely
years.
ridiculous. Yeah.
I mean, we're going to the theatre, I'm paying £7 a ticket, you're paying, what, £12? $12 a ticket?
Yeah, a little less, but yeah.
We want to see what the studio can offer, what the director can offer, what the writer can offer, what everybody who works on this film offers. We don't want to see it on our TVs
Mm-hmm.
in our own home. We want to see it on the big screen with huge speakers. We want to feel that with a great movie rather than just in your own home.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know what Warner Brothers are doing. They're just being stupid. It's just
The thing is they don't know what direction they want to go in.
they're just running before they can even walk, or even crawl.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, let's get back to our Suicide Squad review. Sorry for a bit of the road we've taken, the detour we've taken. What do you think the good parts were in Suicide Squad?
Good parts. I'd say that the introduction of all the characters was fun. I enjoyed getting to know these characters.
The exposition dump in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. I honestly I had some fun with that, but I have to say too, the only other thing is that kind of leads me back to a negative is that then later on they just throw Slipknot at you like, "Oh, hey, here, we forgot about this guy." I was like, "Well, why did you not introduce?" I mean, I know why, and I'm not going to say I don't want to spoil it, I guess, but it it was very jarring to just have a couple more characters thrown randomly at us, but I digress. We're supposed to be talking about good things. Good things. Harley Quinn, she was awesome. That I'm so happy to finally see that in live action on the big screen. Um, Deadshot, I had a lot of fun. I know people that didn't enjoy seeing Will Smith. They felt like he kind of was too much. But honestly, I didn't see Will Smith. I saw Deadshot and I saw Floyd Lawton. So I enjoyed that a lot. And Batman, I enjoyed seeing him in there. It was not as much as I had maybe hoped. He didn't quite have the impact that I wanted or that I expected, but that was a cool scene. And then I liked parts of the Joker. I feel like Jared Leto has a ways to go with that character. I think he needs to um, develop it a little more. I think he got kind of caught up in the spectacle of, um, sending weird presents to his mates on set. But I think that he really needs to spend more time delving into that character, and perhaps it's just because he didn't get enough screen time. I guess that could be the fault, but I felt like as enjoyable as the Joker was, he was certainly underdeveloped, whether that be Jared Leto or the script or the final cut that we got in theaters. But I would say that those three characters and Batman's one scene were highlights for me.
We'll delve into the Joker a little bit later. You bring up Slipknot, and I just want to talk about that for a second. It was more telegraphed than Han Solo's death. Spoilers, by the
Oh,
way.
really?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, you just throw us a character, he's going to die, with no backstory whatsoever. You've introduced 6 characters, and they also did that with Katana. I'm not a huge comic book fan. I don't read that many comic books. I haven't read a comic book in a while. I read graphic novels mainly. But my
Hmm.
brother got really, really annoyed. He's huge in comic books, and he really likes the character of Katana, and he was so annoyed. It was kind of like what X-Men Apocalypse did to Psylocke,
Yeah.
and they just give her nothing really to do. But I do like that they've kept her. Possibly they could make her a part of the Suicide Squad. Who knows? In the future.
I hope
Of
so. I think she deserves it.
Yes, he definitely does. There's a lot of backstory that I could delve into. Let's get to the bad parts. Let's start with the Joker for me because
Okay.
I just didn't get into him
Yeah.
at all. Especially that the scene with Conrad was just I could not get into that scene whatsoever. It was just like the music and the lights and like I felt like his dialogue was sometimes a little bit lower. Like I
Uh-huh.
couldn't hear him so well. I mean, it might be a problem with the editing, but it just I don't know what that was really. I mean, my dad brought up a really interesting point about think about Batman and the Joker. They are two huge comic book rivals.
Hmm.
If you saw Jared Leto's Joker go up against Ben Affleck's Batman, it's not a contest. You just can't see a contest. Batman would like just kill him. It's like so easy.
Yeah, but I would say that's how it is for just about every Joker except for the obvious exception, which is Heath Ledger. I mean, that's kind of been all, and I understand you said maybe you're not a huge comic book fan, but that's always been what it's like in the books, is where somehow, some way, the Joker, who is not, he doesn't have any superpowers, he's not, jacked or anything, he doesn't have anything really beyond sometimes a gun and just a sick, twisted mind, and somehow he always manages to cut Batman down to size. And I think that that's what we're going to see in the standalone Batman film. At least that's what I hope we're going to see.
There's one portrayal of the Joker which I think actually could have worked quite well in this movie because you've got the whole Arkham setting and it's in the future of Batman's life. Have you seen The Dark Knight Returns,
I
the
have.
animated movie?
Yeah, very
Do you
good.
think do you think they could have had that kind of Joker in that movie?
No, actually, because I think that you're saying could they have had it in Suicide Squad?
Yes.
Yeah, no. I think they would want to save it. I think they're going to use that storyline later down the road, and I think that people would have kind of rejected it as being too similar to Heath Ledger's, because I think that was the fine line, the very fine line that Jared Leto walked. I mean, he had to bring us an all new rendition of the Joker, which is kind of ridiculous in and of itself. I mean, he should be able to pick whatever, he should be able to create the Joker however he wants, but it doesn't matter what he should be able to do, because if he had gone one step too close to Heath Ledger's Joker, people would have just rejected it. And I honestly think that um, that version of the Joker is way too close to the anarchist that we get in The Dark Knight.
I'm judging the Joker on what I saw in the movie because that's what people are supposed to do. They're supposed to judge on the movie, not on
Right.
the special features or the Ultimate Edition. I might do a review of the Ultimate Edition. We might do an Ultimate Edition later on when it comes out on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope as I see David Ayer's cut, it's better. I am still kind of hoping because you hear about all the stuff he did on set, and you think when you see the movie, you really didn't have to send rats in the mail to your
No,
co-stars. I mean,
it was just
Heath,
for publicity, I think.
I think too. I mean, Heath Ledger locked himself in a hotel for a month, and that worked. So,
Yeah, exactly.
what other parts do you think of Suicide Squad didn't really hit the mark with you?
I think there's a really obvious choice, and it's the Enchantress, which just yeah. I mean, it's the thing that everyone walked out of the movie just shaking their heads. It didn't matter who you were. Like, sure, Jared Leto's Joker might be a little controversial. I like him, I think, more than most people did, but it did not matter who you were, whether you're the most die-hard comic book fan or you're just some dude off the street this is their first comic book movie. She started out so awesome. When they did that, the first time she summons the Enchantress and they did that cool hand flip technique, I was very intrigued by that because that's something you see out of a horror movie and it excited me. I was like, wow, what are they going to do with this character? I was very intrigued where they could have taken the Enchantress. But what happened was instead of embracing any sort of cool horror aspect, they just went down this cartoonish slide into madness and it just made no sense. She had no motivation. She had nothing interesting to do in the movie. The lines she was given were horrible, absolutely just atrocious, really, because you didn't care if she was evil or what. It didn't matter. You just, and not to mention that she's only a villain because of the Suicide Squad in the first place. They created their own villain, and sometimes that can be an interesting arc. I understand, but they messed it up in the worst way in this movie.
The motivation and the Faceless Army like wanted to destroy the Earth because they did something to us in the past or
Yeah,
whatever, and the Faceless Army that has been such a reoccurrence in comic book movies. It's kind of started with Avengers, but Loki was actually a good villain. Where do
right.
you think it's kind of started from, or is it just the writers just mailing it in just to let's just have a villain? Eh, Who
Yeah, I don't
knows?
know. I almost wonder whose fault that is because David Ayer is an incredible writer. I mean, if you've ever seen End of Watch or Fury or um, Training Day, you know that he knows how to write. So I don't know. I think that the fact that he only had 6 weeks to write that script is what's to blame because he had no time to really flesh out these characters. Uh, you can't write 120 pages of quality material in just 6 weeks. I don't think. I think that there are some exceptions. There always will be, but I don't know. I say if you have this writer who's so good, you let him work. Just let him work. There was time. There was more than enough time. And actually, if you don't mind, I'll go on a quick tangent because I think that you could have had Batman v Superman, nothing for the rest of the year after Batman v Superman totally did not meet expectations. You just kind of give people the rest of the year to forget about it and move on with their lives. Then you hit them hard with a good Wonder Woman movie early 2017. And then you give a Suicide Squad because then David Ayer has plenty of time to do what he needs, figure it all out. And we've, instead of coming off of the incredibly mediocre Batman v Superman, we've come off of hopefully a much better film that is Wonder Woman. And people have had time to forget how, uninspiring Batman v Superman was. Now we can move on and enjoy Suicide Squad, and David Ayer will have had the time that he needs to make a successful film. I don't understand why WB has such a hard time with just letting their artists create art.
I definitely agree. Um, Also, do you think that Warner Bros. Are so involved with their material? Um, Disney and Marvel kind of are-ish. But why can't Warner Bros. Be a little bit more like Disney and just leave? You hire a creative person, you want them to do their thing, you have a look, you possibly give them a few notes, and they, do what they imagined. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
that's how it should be.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree because I'm not saying that, you should just, oh, here's, $175 million, go do what you want. But I am saying that maybe Warner Brothers should trust the people that they hire. If I hire someone to do a job, I've hired them because I think that they can get the job done. And I don't need to be there every waking second, double checking what they're doing and constantly second guessing my choice to hire them in the first place and second guessing the work that they're doing. There's a reason you get David Ayer to direct your movie, write and direct your movie, because he's great at it. He's incredible at it. He has a history with being a great writer director. So you let him do what you know that he can do and you give him the time to do it. Because at the end of the day, if you don't, you only have yourself to blame when Suicide Squad does okay at the box office because Suicide Squad could have destroyed. I think that the only reason Suicide Squad made any money at all is because they had the accidental foresight to put in the Joker and Harley Quinn. Without the Joker and Harley Quinn, I do not think that Suicide Squad would have made hardly any money at all. I think that WB got incredibly lucky, and I think they need to take a step back, reevaluate what they're doing, and let their artists do what they need to do to make a good movie because that's all you need. You just need one good movie at this point because people are so desperate for a good DC movie. If you give them one, then you can probably lock them in for a good long while.
I definitely agree. Also, I think there was a great conversation on the Schmoes No Live show a few weeks ago, possibly about a month ago, where they were talking about directors being the stars of their own movies. And do you think
Mm-hmm.
Warner Bros. Bringing in David Ayer and possibly bringing in other bigger directors down the line, like James Wan doing Aquaman,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that is purely to get the fan bases of those directors to go see the movie?
It's possible. I honestly had never considered it until you brought it up. I think that they're just trying to take a page out of Marvel Studios' book and get directors that are well known, mainly because they have a proven track record. You want someone that has a proven track record, whether it be just in indie films or whether it be, they have 300 behind them and Watchmen behind them and stuff like that. Uh, so no, I don't think that they're just getting people because people know them. I think they're trying to actually hire talent. I think they just get in the way and trip themselves up.
Do you think all of these hands in the kitchen are going to force directors onto Netflix? Because you hear all the positivity that directors and writers and everybody who are in the creative team in movies and TV are like raving about how amazing Netflix are. They give you a few notes, they ask you how like planned out your show is, and they give you a check if they like it. I mean, that is possibly going to be the future. Do you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, actually, I really do. I think that with every new Netflix original, and I do not count those stupid Adam Sandler movies. I do not count that. But I think that all of the other Netflix originals kind of prove that because whether it be the Marvel, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Daredevil season 2, which was incredible, or it be Stranger Things, and actually they have David Ayer now. They have David Ayer and Will Smith doing the Max Landis scripted film Bright. Netflix
I
paid
was just about to get to
90
that.
million for that. That's crazy. That is absolutely, and I cannot wait to see that movie either. I think it's going to be awesome. So yeah, I think that Netflix is just they're a Rolling Stone right now, and they're going to continue to make an impact. and soon they'll have enough money to be doing big budgeted films, and people are going to watch them and people are going to love them, I think.
Yeah, definitely. We've gone on a little bit of a tangent. I've liked this conversation we bring. Let's bring it back to Suicide Squad. Do you think David Ayer is going to come back and do Suicide Squad 2?
Um, I want him to be honest. I would really like to see some redemption for him. Whether or not he wants to, I'm not sure. It depends on if working with WB left a bad taste in his mouth. He hasn't pulled a Joss Whedon or anything and said anything to the press about a bad experience, but you have to wonder if maybe he's just being polite and he doesn't really like the experience that he's had. But I would certainly like to see him come back and get another shot at it.
I would too. Just to wrap up the Suicide Squad, should people go see Suicide Squad or should they not?
Um, that's a good question. I would say if you are interested to see, if you want to have your own opinion on the Joker and Harley Quinn, the performances given, then I would say yes. And if you are interested in the next chapter of the DC extended universe, then I would say yes. I would say just expect to have to overlook plenty of mistakes because they're there and they're jarring and it's close to ruining the film. However, I still enjoyed it and I still give it a positive review. So just by the slightest of margins, though.
I'll go on a Rotten Tomatoes basis. I don't think I could give it 60%. I
Oh
probably give
wow,
it 45, possibly 50. I, it was entertaining-ish. The bit where Will Smith got up and did a whole action scene on a car, that was pretty cool. But
yeah, I
other
liked
than
that.
that, the music was jarring and Chantress was horrific, even worse than Thingy from Apocalypse. Oh, how did I forget his name? It's Apocalypse. Yeah, even worse than Apocalypse. I think that kind of wraps up for our Suicide Squad slash Warner Brothers review.
Yeah, I think we've torn it apart enough.
I think we should get to the other big hitter. It is a Netflix phenomenon, and we are going to be talking about Stranger Things, a show that I think everybody loves.
Yeah, it
Now,
doesn't matter who you are, you like this. You have to. I can't see how you couldn't.
it hits on every single level. I love
Yep.
this show.
Yeah.
How quickly did you watch it?
Um, I watched it in 3 days actually. I wanted to finish it in two, but I didn't get an opportunity, so it kind of had to stretch to three. But if I had the time, I would have finished it in two for sure.
I watched it in about 5 days, and I was just looking at my iPad because I was watching with my family. I was just looking at my iPad every night. We didn't watch a Stranger Things episode. I was just like, oh, I really want to watch a Stranger Things episode. I really want to watch a Stranger Things episode. And on the fifth
Yeah.
day, we had a massive binge that went from about 10:30 p.m. to 3 in the morning. And I was like, that's the binge I was looking for, and it was amazing, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to get to some key points. I hope we're not reiterating the other reviews that are on the web. One of the big things that Stranger Things does is it gives homage to the Steven Spielberg kind of style and a bit of John Carpenter and a bit of Stephen King. How did that work for you?
It was pretty close to perfect. The 80s nostalgia was captured incredibly well. Not a lot of things that try to do that succeed. And I was, I mean, I'll say this: when I first saw the trailer, I kind of dismissed it. I was like, okay, I'll probably work my way around to that eventually. But it wasn't something that I was dying to see because I just assumed that it was going to follow in the footsteps of movies and TV shows that came before it, such as Super 8, and kind of just not really fill that 80s nostalgia slot quite as well as maybe you would hope. However, one of my friends saw it. He watched it in 1 or 2 days and he was just raving about it to me, and he said that they did it justice. So once I heard him raving about it, I had to start watching it. And I would say within the first 5-10 minutes of the first episode, I was immediately hooked.
When I heard "Should I Stay or Should I Go" by The Clash, then I was hooked. um, we both didn't grow up in the 80s, so
Nope.
people in the 80s were like, "Oh yeah, that's funny. That they relate to it to our childhood." I respect that they've done it, but it doesn't really relate to my childhood so much. And like, I probably didn't notice every single homage that they did to the 80s. I got most of them. I got like the Stand By Me's and the straight to Stephen King and the Steven Spielbergs and everything like that. Do you think that people who were kids in the 80s, like, how do you think they'll feel with the nostalgia of the show?
I think they'll like it. When I was watching the show, it immediately made me think of my dad, who did grow up in the 80s, and he's a big fan of Goonies and Back to the Future and all of those kind of quintessential 80s movies. And that's actually, I was exposed to a lot of that 80s film culture growing up just through my dad. And so that's how even I was able to kind of get some nostalgia from it. But anyway, I recommended it to him. He hasn't had any time to watch it yet, but if I know my dad, I know that he's going to love it just because it really he's going to enjoy all of the 80s aesthetic that the show has.
I think I'm sure he will. Let's get to your favourite parts of Stranger Things. There were a ton of brilliance in this
Multiple
show, but
scenes every episode that just blew
yeah,
my mind.
get to like the quintessential parts that you thought were brilliantly executed.
The friendship between the younger kids was incredible. Those actors just, I can't even understand how they are as young as they are and still as good because they knew how to play off of each other so well. And I give a lot of credit to the Duffer brothers for directing them so well. And I'm one of the people that really enjoyed Winona Ryder's performance because to me, she portrayed how a mother from an 80s film would overreact. Because to me, that's how every mother in an 80s movie overreacts. So it never seemed like she was overdoing it because I just assumed that was what she was going for, as kind of the classic 80s mom who has to go crazy about every little thing. And then honestly, one of my favorite storylines was the one with Jonathan and Nancy. I actually really liked how it had a very horror film esque John Carpenter feel to it, and that was probably one of my favorite of the side storylines.
What I think is done brilliant to the show. Obviously, you've got the kids who are the main focus, but you've got the teenagers and you've got the adults. So you hit all demographics. Adults maybe just like maybe they just don't like kids so much. And I think, oh, why need teenagers? They can enjoy the adult part. Teenagers, they can just like closed off. They just like, oh yeah, these are teenagers. I'll follow them. And the kids, they can have a wonderful experience watching people their own age have crazy adventures. And that's the thing that I really did enjoy and respect that
It's
the Duffer Brothers
genius.
did with this show. Yeah. And let's get to one of the greatest parts I think this show has got to offer is the ending. I mean, my goodness me, it was fantastic. I think it's probably my favorite season one of a show, and that's because do you think like Arrow and the mainstream TV shows they have to set up for another series, but this was it gave some hinters at what could be in season two, and it definitely left some strings untied, but it wrapped up perfectly in my view. I would love to see a season two, and I can't wait. What were your thoughts on the ending?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I liked how it was 8 episodes. I felt like that was the perfect length. It was a very self-contained story. Like you said, they didn't have to worry about setting up season 2, 3, all the way through season 8 or whatever, like a show like Arrow or Supergirl or something of that nature might have to worry about The Walking Dead, stuff like that. They didn't have to set up quite so many characters and plot points. They had their story, they knew what it was, they knew what the end was before they even started filming. And I think that was important because they knew where they were going, they knew how to get there. Arrow, Walking Dead, these sorts of shows, they don't know necessarily where they're going because they don't know how long they will last. And Stranger Things didn't have to worry about that. They knew they were doing this season. And if another one came along, great. But it didn't matter because they had their story and they told it perfectly well. And I'm actually going to ask you a question. Um, season 2, would you said you're excited, but do you think that maybe it might ruin kind of the enjoyment that you've had of the first season if season 2 comes out and it's just okay?
I think I get this thing in my head where if I love the characters, I probably won't care that much about the story. I just want to see these characters have some fun adventures that, I don't know, rip my heart out, make me
Yeah.
laugh, everything. I think they've done that in season one. I hope that they don't ruin the characters, because that's what's going to ruin the show for me. If they don't ruin the characters and they stay true to all of the characters, possibly even add some more great characters in, I think I'll love it.
You just want to see the characters interact.
I think the character relationships, especially with the kids, were sublime, and I can't wait. Now, the Duffer Brothers have said that season 2 is going to be taking place a year after, because the kids are growing up and it's hard to keep doing
That makes
that.
sense.
Yeah. Especially with Gaten Matarazzo. I hope I'm not butchering that name. He's growing up. His voice has got really deep as well. He had to do loads of ADR, so he probably won't want to do that in season 2. Would Let me get back to the actual question. Would you like to have had an anthology?
By that you mean the next Stranger Things season has nothing to do really with characters that we've already seen?
Well, I'm not saying it doesn't have anything. Maybe we see some bits of 11 possibly in the Upside Down, or maybe bits with David Harbour or Matthew Modine. But do you think it could have, its own, like a completely new, well, mostly new characters in a completely different setting with a few interactions with the cast we already know?
Um, I think that it could. I'm not sure that's necessarily what I want to see. Growing up, I loved watching Twilight Zone. That's
Yeah.
one of my favorite shows of all time. And so I love the anthology nature of that show. But the difference is it was just half an hour at a time, where Stranger Things already has 8 hour long episodes under its belt. I think that they would probably be best served to just go ahead and keep the same setting and characters and history, and just go ahead and find another adventure for these characters to go on. I think that it could be strongly related to the story that we've already had with the Upside Down and the Demogorgon. But I think that you just need to find a way to kind of turn that on its head and keep these same great characters, great cast, and just give them something else that they need to overcome. Because I think that you already have so much set up. If you went with an anthology, you'd have to worry about starting over, and I think that would be too jarring. I don't think people would enjoy that quite as much.
A huge emotional amount of investment, especially from me, and I know a lot of people are definitely emotionally invested in this show. I think it would be a little bit of an upset to not go delve these characters and worlds and relationships that we've already seen. Now,
Hmm.
you might not be able to come up with an answer to this question. Flaws in the show that you found?
Um, yeah, that's a little more difficult because they weren't when they did happen, they weren't so glaring that they really stuck in my mind. If I really thought about it, there were maybe one or two times where some of the line deliveries by some of the younger cast maybe weren't I don't know, they were maybe just a little overdone or even underdone. But I mean, it's hard to really nitpick that because they're just kids,
Mm.
you know? So yeah, it's not like they're Christian Bale or anything, and you'd be like, oh, well, this dude, he has a track record. But no, honestly, there's really not too much wrong with it. It was just little things here and there. Maybe a couple of the scenes were a little overcooked, but I overall, it's just it's crazy how much I enjoyed this show. I had so much fun with it, and it was a very cerebral experience too, to where it was more than just having fun. It also got you thinking, and it got you invested, and you wanted to know the outcome. You were genuinely interested to see what happened to these characters and to get an answer to the mystery of the plot.
We won't move on from our review just now. I would like to talk about Netflix because earlier on you were talking about you'd seen the trailer and you kind of dismissed the show until your friend told you. I had no idea that this was even a thing before Mark Riley and Mark Ellis gave their review for Schmoes No. I had literally,
Mm-hmm.
it was just, it came out of the blue for me. I was like, okay, I've heard, after I saw that review, I was like, okay, let's search up what this is. I saw some other reviews, I heard some other stuff, people saying it was amazing. Then I started, okay, let's watch the show, and I was instantly hooked. Do
Yeah.
you think that's a problem with Netflix? Do you think their advertisement isn't too good, not including their Marvel shows?
Um, Honestly, no. I had heard I want to say it was Mark Ellis. He said it on a show recently. He said something to where Netflix has kind of found their niche. They have the shows that they promote the heck out of, whether it be their Marvel shows or I don't even know. They were promoting that Marco Polo show back when that first came out.
Yes.
They were promoting that thing like crazy. I don't know if it really went anywhere. I think that was mainly just because they spent so much money on it, to be honest. But then they have shows like Peaky Blinders. For the longest time, I had no idea that was a Netflix original. I just knew that it existed and I knew that it was around, but I didn't know that that was actually a Netflix original series. And then as far as Stranger Things, I saw the trailer for it the day that it came out. But what Mark Ellis had said is they found their niche where they have those shows that they promote heavily because they know that's going to be the big money makers, but then they have these other shows that they just like, you know what? We'll just drop this on there and let word of mouth take it and see where it goes. And I think that allows them to really do what they want when they want because people just eat this stuff up anyway. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter that they didn't advertise Stranger Things because everybody and their mother, if they haven't seen it, they at least know it that it exists and it's on their Netflix queue right now. So I think that they understand their marketing space very well. Kind of surprisingly, actually, because Netflix shows seem like they would be something difficult to market.
Yes, they definitely would. You made a point about Peaky Blinders, and the thing about Netflix, I don't understand why they've done it, but I know in America that Better Call Saul airs on AMC, doesn't it?
Yes.
Peaky Blinders airs on BBC over here. They say on my Netflix, Better Call Saul a Netflix original, and that they've already said
Oh.
Netflix original on Peaky Blinders, and it's not. It's like, okay, that's something I don't understand. I just wanted to bring that up just for the sake of bringing it up. Um,
Yeah.
what do you see? Like, do you think, I don't know, in 40 years' time, 30 years' time, everybody will either be directing and writing for Netflix?
Um, I think that a lot of things would have to happen first before that would just be the norm. I think that first, um, home theater equipment, and by home theater I mean like 100 plus inch televisions, 4K surround sound, 7.1. with big and expensive amplifiers. If that all becomes affordable to someone like me, and people have the space for it, if that becomes more common, I think then maybe, yeah. But I think that right now studios have the money. Netflix, they have money, but not as much. Studios have the history. They've been around since the dawn of movies. And studios have um, more marketing space. That By that I mean Netflix. There's only one way you can see a Netflix movie, and that's on Netflix. Whereas there's multiple ways to see a Warner Brothers movie, because you can go to any theater, just about, and you can go to whichever theater you want if you have one that you like specifically for whatever reason, and you can go at any time of the day and with whoever you want. Whereas Netflix, it's like you have to have um, a Netflix subscription. I don't know. I just don't see. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see it becoming a thing to where Hollywood goes away. I think it's too strong. I think it's a juggernaut, and I think that it'll remain where it is.
I think that just about wraps things up for our Stranger Things slash Netflix discussion. But you haven't gotten rid of us that easily. That takes some doing. We, in these last precious minutes of this podcast, will be talking to you about the Fan Movie Trivia Schmodown. And I'm ecstatic. I'm so excited. Now, you may know that I hosted the Fan Movie Trivia Special with guests Robert Butler III and Ryan Snelling, and it was fantastic. I felt so very privileged for them to be on my show. Unfortunately, Ryan couldn't make it. He'll definitely be on every other, or, well, hopefully most of the other Fan Movie Trivia Schmodowns in the future. It will be once a month, and it'll be uploaded on this channel on the weekends. I guess what I wanted to do was get even more of a connection between the schmoes and their fans. I mean, it might not be my place, but I'm a dedicated fan of the schmoes, and there are a ton more who are podcasters like me and Ryan, who maybe are struggling like me and Ryan, and maybe don't have that many views. And what I want to happen is for them to come on here, get a reputation, and possibly have the opportunity to go on the Collider produced movie trivia Schmodown. And I hope that's what will happen. However, you may be thinking, oh, if it's just like the movie trivia Schmodown that Collider and Schmoes do, I won't watch it, I'll just watch theirs. This is completely different. There'll be some guests involved, pretty bad impersonations, like my Vinnie Jones you heard in the beginning. I've got a Bane, Gary Busey, Butthead, Lord Vader, maybe popping up in the future. Now let's get to the rules. There are 4 rounds. Ryan, please take it away for rounds 1 and 2.
Yeah, absolutely. So our first round is going to be a themed round, and the theme of the each particular show will be based off of a movie that is in theaters that week. So this week we have Ben Hur. So it could be something along the lines of historical dramas or historical epics. And then next week it could be superhero films or Star Wars films or whichever, depending on what is in theaters at the time. And then the second round, which this one really interests me because the way I see it, I see this round being just hectic and crazy, and it could go to either contestant. The second round is going to be a speed round where a question will be asked, and whichever contestant says their name first gets to answer or gets a chance to answer. And I believe that we're going to do it to where if they answer incorrectly, we're just going to keep moving on to the next question, because we're just going to go through these questions as quick as possible and kind of get things a little hectic and get these contestants sweating a little bit.
The third round is provided by IMDb. I will type in a movie on IMDb. On that movie page, I will read out the year and the genres. Then, I will read out 2 keywords. If the contestant guesses the movie that I'm looking at on IMDb, they get 5 points. So it kind of does slow it down from the hecticness. It's kind of like a nice balance. But if they cannot get the answer, they can't guess, then they have the option of me reading out 2 more keywords. They can only have 3 points if they guess it right from there on, and if they want 2 more keywords, then they can, and they can only have 1 point. They can't have any more keywords after that, and they just have to guess for 1 point. There is also stealing in that round. Now for the final round, this will hopefully work because of sound quality, and I tried it out. I will gather 1 minute sound clippings from a film, and I will play it through the mic. If they get it, then they get 5 points. If they don't get it and they guess wrongly, 3 points get taken away from their final score. And there is also stealing in that round. So it kind of gives a slower pace to the first 2 rounds, what I really want them to be like. Yes. Now, I think this is nearly it. I just want to talk about our channel. We will be doing weekly podcasts discussing things like Suicide Squad, things like Stranger Things, things like Warner Bros, things like Netflix, things like Disney. All of the movie stuff that you love to hear about, we'll be talking about. But also, as you probably won't know the guests so much, we will have the 2 guests coming on our midweek podcast to kind of have a pre-match conference in a way to get you into these 2 contestants, see which ones you like, see which ones you don't like, see who you may be rooting for, and get the gist of what they're about. Because we don't have the fandom of the Schmodown, and we need to get across the contestants as well as we can. I think this is a good way to do it. And I think this brings us to the end of our reasonably long podcast. Where can they find you on the interwebs, Ryan?
If anybody's interested, they can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Clan McClellan. That's Clan MCLELLAN. Instagram, I don't use it as much, but I'm going to try to get into it a little more. And same thing with Twitter.
And it's a bit late for me and I can't be bothered to tell you. I'll just write it in a description below where you can find me. And I think that is goodbye from me. And
Yeah,
goodbye from Ryan.
absolutely. Great podcast. It was fun talking movies.